You're listening to Narcotica, a podcast giving you the straight dope about drugs and the people who use them.
Okay, Narcotic listeners, we have a very special episode. Not only is it being filmed, but in the same room for the first time ever, Troy and me.
Yeah.
High five. That's the first time we've recorded in the same room, a high five. So, yeah, I'm in LA. I'm in, get this, Beverly Hills, guys. I got flown out here to talk to Hollywood. And Troy, where do you live from here? Like 3 hours away?
I live near Joshua Tree in the high desert. Like getting high there all the time.
So like Joshua Tree is
It's about 3 hours from Los
it's
Angeles.
it's like the hipster Hamptons of LA. It's where like people go to like get out.
Yeah, you can definitely say that.
Instead of like lake houses, it's like stucco cabins.
Lots of Joshua trees and desert.
What is a Joshua tree?
It is a type of yucca plant.
What's a yucca plant? What do they look like?
It's a succulent. Look it up. It looks like a Dr. Seuss tree.
I'm gonna look up.
You know the Lorax. Like that's not the tree that's inspired. I used to think that it's actually incorrect. I can't remember the tree that inspired the Lorax, but there are these big, bushy, weird psychedelic trees.
So they're like tall cactus.
Yeah, I've got one in my backyard. And
are they prickly and thorny?
Yeah, and they produce these really weird flowers. Since I know so much about insects, there's this one moth that pollinates the flowers, and it doesn't drink the nectar. It just lays its eggs in the flower. And if this moth dies, then the Joshua trees will die. The Joshua trees are going to die anyway because of climate change. They're sensitive to like slight increases in heat.
Will Joshua Tree itself just expand and LA will just be one big Joshua Tree desert?
I hope not. There is an organization in the high desert called the Mojave Desert Land Trust, and they are just buying up parcels of land. I've been following them, and like in the last 2 weeks alone, they probably purchased a little less than 200 acres, just these empty lots.
Like to protect it?
Yeah, it's awesome, and I love what they're doing. I want to volunteer with them, but there was also this big development project that got canceled in the area. They're going to build like 250 more homes or something like that. They were going to drain water from the aquifers in the Mojave Desert to pump the water down the hill, because it's in the mountains, to Palm Springs and all these desert cities. And a judge blocked that. The Trump administration was trying to push that through. Forget the name of the project, but it's fucking evil. Like sucking up the last bit of water in the desert so that you can build more suburbs in places that don't need suburbs.
Do you know anything about the Salton Sea? Isn't it like man-made disaster?
It's the
largest... It's like an ecological like waste dump.
It makes me actually really nervous to be living where I'm living. The Salton Sea.
Because I flew over the Salton Sea on my way in from Chicago, and I was just like looking at it. I was just like, that looks like fucking death down there.
It is death. No, literally, I've been there once, and the beaches are made of fish bones. It's just you're walking and you're like, what's this white sand? And it's all fish bones.
No, these are fossils.
Yeah. So it's the largest body of water in California. It's a man-made. It was made in the 60s or something like that.
Made by white men, specifically white man made.
And it was supposed to be this tourist paradise, and it was for a while. But the salinity of the water is so high that nothing can really live in it. Everything just started dying, and it smelled really bad. There's so much pesticide and fertilizer runoff.
So Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia is literally trying to build like a Jurassic Park in the desert. It sounds a lot like the Salton Sea, actually. There's going to be like robot dinosaurs and like an oasis. Like it's what I think white people want in an amusement park, where I think... So Saudi Arabia bans alcohol totally. It's a dry country.
Right.
But I think they'll allow alcohol in their desert Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Well, so the Salton Sea is slowly drying up, and all the fertilizer and pesticides that are in the water there are just like becoming this caked mud, and that is dry. And the wind comes and it blows it, and it's been contributing to a lot of asthma problems in the area.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I live on the other side of Joshua Tree National Park, so I feel like maybe that just absorbs all the bad air or something. But it's just like, yeah, I live next to a giant toxic water waste dump, and there's all these abandoned homes out there. Like, it's post-apocalyptic.
But cannabis now in California is legal, but somehow in San Bernardino, which I just learned today, is the biggest county in America. Is that
The only thing
by land, the biggest county?
The only thing that's bigger is like unincorporated census bureaus in like Alaska.
Okay, Alaska doesn't count. It's fucking huge.
Yeah, but the San Bernardino is the largest county and super conservative. I feel weird being out there sometimes.
But they banned any dispensaries. So like no cannabis dispensaries operate in San Bernardino.
Because the Prop 64, the law that recreationalized marijuana in California, allowed counties and cities to make their own little laws. It was the way to get it
freedom.
Passed.
They have their
the freedom to still keep things illegal.
It's the free market. Free market at its finest.
The thing is like it would bring so many jobs to the high desert if you allowed dispensaries there, because it's about 100,000 people that live in the area, something like that.
And so you have to drive like what, a half hour to go to a dispensary?
Yeah. When I lived in 29 Palms, it was an hour. So I would just get it delivered, which was sort of illegal, but no one could catch you. And I can grow my own in my house, but
that sounds like a lot of work.
I'm not the best gardener, no.
Yeah, you don't have the green thumb. I mean, so when I lived in Colorado, that sounds a lot like Colorado Springs, which is basically, okay, here's Colorado Springs. There is Colorado College, which is like your typical like liberal arts sort of oasis. But then the rest of Colorado Springs is like Hell's Angels and mega churches. And like, it's very strange. So I've never been there, but this is like what Colorado Springs did. They banned dispensaries there. So anyone there just has to like drive over to the next town to like get to the nearest dispensary, which probably sucks for all the Colorado college kids who, definitely smoke weed, might not have cars, and who knows, I bet there's just like a good black market there, like serving up the college kids.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in college, that was a good way for a lot of college students to make money is selling weed. So, I mean, keeping those people in business.
So on today's episode, we, we're just getting acquainted with each other. We've had good chemistry on the show through Zoom, our video conference app, but now we're in person.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna have a fun little show. We're going to read a really, really good USA Today story. Surprisingly, it sucks.
Totally sucks.
The 25 most dangerous drugs. So we're gonna read that story, which was published today for you listeners, and so
we kind of want to explore this concept that human beings love ranking things, ranking the most dangerous drug. Like, why do we want to do that, and what actually is the most dangerous drug? I mean,
like obviously sarin gas is like the most dangerous drug, right? Like that should be probably at the top of this list, but this list is so convoluted, and we'll get to that. But when we think about the most dangerous drugs, like drugs are chemicals, and chemicals are everywhere. Like, got this coffee right here. I mean, obviously not super dangerous. It makes me, I don't know, gives me anxiety sometimes, but like everything is a chemical, everything is a drug. But that's for starters why these lists sort of always fail. And this one, does not deliver the goods, folks.
Yeah, I don't know who said it first, but the poison is a matter of a dose, or something like that. The poison is a matter of the dose. I should just look who said that. I have power of the internet.
Well, one thing before we get into this article. So a really interesting researcher, this guy's in the UK. His name is David Nutt, Professor David Nutt, and he was actually like the equivalent of the like the drug czar. He was like a very powerful sort of like drug policy guy at one point in the UK, and he got driven out of office so fast for just like saying science-y things about drugs, like actually basing his positions and his policy positions in the research. And like, so one thing he said was, it was about horseback riding. He basically said, there is not much difference between horse riding and ecstasy, meaning like danger-wise, like people who ride horses, they fall off the horse, they get paralyzed, like just saying that humans do activities, everyday activities that aren't illegal, and they die or they get injured, and that drugs should be measured on that same level of harm. So he measures like the societal impact of drugs on like not just the user, but also the community in which the user is using. And so that obviously gives a much better context to the harms of drugs. And so after this guy said that like ecstasy is probably no less dangerous than horseback riding, yeah, he got like impeached, or whatever the equivalent of impeached.
What do they call it in the UK? Canned.
Yeah, he got
sacked. He got sacked.
He got sacked so fast. so okay, we're going to start reading this article, and then we'll get to its ranking in a minute. So this article is by Michael B. Sauter, and it's under the 24/7 Wall Street vertical. So it's like a business or like a finance guy writing about drugs. So this should be interesting. It begins, the opioid epidemic is an ever-growing struggle. Nearly 70,000 Americans died from a drug overdose last year, according to data released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Well, I mean, he got that right. The one thing he didn't do, which so many people do, is conflate that 70,000 number. They think that 70,000 number is all opioids.
Right.
When really it's like all overdoses, which involve like a whole galaxy of drugs.
And a lot of those, I don't know the exact numbers, but a lot of those overdoses are polydrug use. So it's not just, the media is responsible for this. They really reframe this whole crisis as it's just opioids. People are just like it's as if they're only taking fentanyl in a pill and then overdosing, when it's like they're taking a cocktail of heroin and it has something mixed in it, or they have been drinking and doing other drugs.
Yeah, and so like he goes on to say exactly what you're saying. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of accidental death in the United States. More Americans die of drug overdoses than in car accidents, which are also frequently the result of substance abuse, questionable. Nearly half of fatal car accidents involve alcohol or other substances. So yeah, we need to get rid of this term substance abuse. Like, okay, there are child abusers, there are spousal abusers, like those are people like committing acts of violence onto people. And when you get into the whole substance abuse and drug abuser realm, you're really just calling these people fucked up criminals. So like I hate when they do that.
Yeah, what's a better term? Because I think people, I mean, it's so much about movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, like the way that the CDC and the academics, they say misuse, which is, you know, fine. I just think you can call it by the result of substance use. Like,
yeah,
like the thing happened because you used substances, not because you abused them. You just used them.
Right. You're projecting. If you say someone's abusing, you're projecting what that person was using that drug and for what purpose, and you don't know. Like, you know, maybe Kurt Cobain's a good example of this. He used heroin because he had stomach ulcers and it helped with the pain. Was he abusing the drug, or was he using it to medicate himself? I mean,
right. And like, I think it's like a controversial thing to say that all drug use is self-medication. And, I happen to think, like, based on my own experience, like, a lot of drug use could be self-medication, but, like, that's one context. Like, it doesn't all fall under the rubric of, like, coping with psychological pain. Like, there's so many different contexts in which drugs are used, and the second we just label it substance abuse, like, it gets placed into this criminalized context, and, like, we don't need a valence to it. Just call it drug use. Like, it's even shorter. Like, editors love, clarity and being concise.
Right.
Just call it drug use.
The other thing is that we have this weird attitude that drug use is somehow this weird behavior when it's probably one of the most normal human behaviors that there is. And it has helped with our evolution, being able to recognize that you take a plant and it has an effect, and harnessing that power is what helped us survive as a society. Evolve from little societies into big civilizations. Like, drug use is the most normal thing. Being sober is what's weird, and we celebrate that. It was on Reddit yesterday, like, Elton John just celebrated 29 years of sobriety, and it's like, well, good for him, but that doesn't mean anything.
And do you know what Elton John does with his spare time? He spends like $60,000 every time he walks into Gucci. Like, instead of like spending that on cocaine, he buys like sunglasses.
Right.
Cool, man. Like, good for you. Glad that you're not dead. Glad you're making music. And, I don't think it's even like his people who are like cranking out press releases about his sobriety. I think it's very much like a media driven thing where like People magazine or whatever tabloids are sort of in the aisle and in the checkout lane. Like, that's the type of media that's always like Rob Lowe, 14 years sober, Elton John, 24 years sober. And it's just like, yeah. And same with Robert Downey Jr. We're in Hollywood right now, Beverly Hills. Like, so many actors are known based on how many years they've been sober.
Which is good for them. I mean, like, I'm not going to say it's easy to do that. It would be pretty difficult for me.
No, you need Scientology for that shit. Like, you need some serious, like, load-bearing belief to not do any substances for 25 years. Like, that's intense as fuck. Okay, back to the episode. Sorry, there was a vacuum going on outside the room. We are in an undisclosed Hollywood hotel. We cannot give you our location. It's top secret.
We don't want them to sue us.
Yeah.
You were recording a podcast on drugs? No, it's a podcast about drugs.
Well, that, and also we loaded in like cameras and audio. Like, I think they think we're filming porn in here. So we'll just keep a low profile here. So back to this article.
Yeah, ranking the most dangerous drugs.
Yeah, the 25 most dangerous drugs. Okay, it goes on. The vast majority of people who drink alcohol in the United States, more than half of Americans, do so responsibly. Millions of people also use pain medication every day and do not stray from their prescribed dosage. Yeah, I mean, I think that's good. Obviously, like, I think we've talked about this a lot on the show, how in a lot of the coverage of the overdose crisis, like, opioids are like heavily demonized, and like Troy, like, you're talking to a ton of patients about how they're being forcibly tapered, and how patients who have a better quality of life on opioids, like, basically in the name of battling the opioid crisis, are like losing their medications.
Yeah, that's what I mean, it just prickles me or gets my defenses up whenever someone frames drugs as dangerous, because that's kind of irrelevant. I know that sounds weird, but like, there's this book that I read a long time ago, and it was like just comparing statistics of things like teddy bears are more dangerous than actual bears. More people die every year from teddy bears. It's weird, but or braziers or bathtubs or whatever. And I like that this article is kind of talking about how drugs can be used responsibly, but I mean, everything can be used responsibly or irresponsibly. I spoke to Steve Rolls earlier this year. He's the senior policy analyst at the Transform Drug Policy Foundation, this think tank in the UK. And he talks about how there's all these different types of risky behaviors that we regulate. Like, if you want to jump out of an airplane, fine. We're going to make sure that you have to use a parachute. The parachute companies are regulated, whatever, and you do it safely. It doesn't stop people from dying from parachuting. But for drugs, for some reason, we have this completely backwards view of them that's like, oh, we should isolate them from society. We should make them harder to get, which doesn't actually make them harder to get. It just makes them more dangerous. It incentivizes what's called the iron law of prohibition. It incentivizes smaller, more potent forms of drugs, which is why we have this fentanyl crisis right now.
Right, like it's easier to move you get more bang for your buck moving a barrel of moonshine or bathtub gin than like a barrel of beer, because like the potency of the gin is far more intense than alcohol, and that's exactly what's happening with opioids and fentanyl right now.
And some people like Erman Lopez will say, hey, prohibition worked, but they'll kind of forget that like it did have a lot of more serious side effects, like what is the byproduct when you don't brew alcohol correctly? Methanol.
Oh yeah, like people got poisoned.
Yeah, and the United States government actually poisoned alcohol supplies
as like a deterrent to get people to stop using it.
And it killed something like 10,000 people.
There's a really good book about, like, it's called like the Toxins Guide to Poison, or I forget what it is, but the author makes that very point, and yeah, like there are people out there making like that argument, and
yeah, so saying prohibition worked is like,
yeah, like define worked.
Is this really a better alternative than?
Yeah, like it's mind numbing to hear that stuff, and it's like I often think that we're by prohibiting something like alcohol and then pointing at a reduction in like domestic violence, it's like I get that association, and I get that alcohol is a factor in a lot of toxic relationships, but I think that like just taking away the alcohol, it doesn't fix underlying issues. That like, why does US culture create men who act out violence on women? Like that's a much more fundamental thing to tackle than just like, tinkering around the edge, taking away the alcohol. It's like, let's talk about the structures in society that lead to this violence, rather than just like, oh, let's pluck out alcohol and point to a reduction in violence. Like I think it's just like it's like a very like think tanky, voxy way of looking at society.
Yeah. People are always quick to remind you that prohibition was kind of pushed by people in the women's suffrage movement, but they kind of overlooked the fact that women also helped dismantle prohibition.
Yeah, and look, we could go on and on about how prohibition is a stupid ass thing, and thankfully it's overturned, and we collectively changed our minds about that. And so like what we're about to list off in this article, a lot of the drugs on it, in the 25 most dangerous drugs, a lot of these aren't actually illegal or sort of the like illicit, scary boogeyman drugs. So number one,
I just got it. They're listed alphabetically.
Okay, so we were wondering why the hell.
Yeah, we were wondering what metrics they were. What is your quote unquote what's most dangerous, and like why is acetaminophen first, followed by alcohol,
right,
and then anti-anxiety medication? This
is why this is the most convoluted list I had ever seen, because it's alphabetical, which is like, that's not even a ranking. That's alphabet. We are alphabetizing dangerous drugs for you. How much does this guy get paid to put drugs in alphabetical order? Holy shit. So number one, acetaminophen. Folks, acetaminophen, yeah, like it can for sure have harms to your liver, and you shouldn't take a lot of it. and it's listed number one. And so we were both scratching our heads over here, like, why the fuck is that the first dangerous drug or the least dangerous? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So we just had an epiphany. It's alphabetized.
Yeah, acetaminophen, also known as Tylenol, when taken in excess, according to this, or combined with alcohol and other pain meds, can cause long-term liver damage, liver toxicity, death. That acetaminophen is interesting because it's like added to so many opioids as like
a deterrent. Yeah.
Some people say they add it so that it makes the opioids more pain relieving, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit.
It's so that you don't take too many of them.
It's so if you take 10 hydrocodone that has 500 milligrams of acetaminophen in every pill, you're fucking up your liver.
Yeah.
Which is like great. So on top of whatever condition this person got prescribed opioids to, now they have liver damage. Like, thank you, drug companies. You're great.
It also makes them extra money, I'm sure, adding an extra ingredient in there.
Right. It's called innovation, Troy. It's innovation. That's innovative. Okay, so now that we realize this list is even dumber than we thought it was, let's move on to number 2. Alcohol.
Common names: beer, wine, liquor.
Okay, wow. So as we were just saying a moment ago, like, alcohol, it's legal and it's far more dangerous than things like opioids societally. Like, if we take in all the whole galaxy of harms related to a drug, in this case, like drunk driving and domestic violence and just violence in general, and even things like suicide and all these other totally horrific everyday horrors of being alive in America right now, alcohol is a factor in like all of them. So like 88,000 deaths roughly a year are directly linked to alcohol, which is probably an undercount. I'm sure there's far more deaths every year that alcohol plays a factor in.
And that 88,000 number, it's been sort of steady for the last 15 years or so. That's people are like, oh, the opioid overdose crisis or the drug overdose crisis killed more people than Americans died in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined. Well, that's dwarfed by the amount of alcohol-related deaths every year. There's about 200 diseases that are linked to alcohol and at least 7 types of cancer. If you're a woman or you just have breasts and you want to reduce the risk of breast cancer, the best way to do that is to stop drinking. That's just a fact. And then but on this other hand, I just want to be clear on this. Like, I'm not against alcohol. I drink fairly regularly. I enjoy it. And I wouldn't want to tell somebody that they can't enjoy that. You just have to, understand the risks. And alcohol is this drug that's really primitive. I've heard multiple times from researchers, policymakers, and serious people that if alcohol were discovered yesterday, it would not be made legal. Like, there's no way we would allow a drug like alcohol to be regulated the way that it's regulated now.
I think like I'm okay with something as dangerous as alcohol being out there. I'm okay with people using it. I personally don't like it that much. It just doesn't make me feel good. So like, but that I don't like. I'm not a legislator, but I don't legislate based on like my personal preferences for hundreds of millions of other people. Like, that's like the crazy radical shit that Republicans do. Like, that's not a good way to approach any problem just based on how you feel about it. But with alcohol, I mean, I do think that we need to tax it more, which will just make it less used. And then also basically the marketing and in all the ways that alcohol companies like subtly, like, advertising works. Like, billions of dollars would not be spent on advertising if it didn't work. And I think like if we tax alcohol better, if we have a less advertising, I think a lot of lives would probably be saved just on those 2 things alone.
Let's move on to the next one, I guess.
Okay, so since we're going in alphabetical order here, anti-anxiety medication, parentheses, benzodiazepines.
Yeah, so Xanax, Valium, Klonopin. I would add Itizolam on there. It's not a benzodiazepine, but it is used for the same purpose. Sort of a similar drug.
Well, the benzo market is actually going through interesting transformations too, just like how synthetic opioids, like all these weird fentanyl analogs are out there. There's a bunch of new synthetic benzos that people seem to like and are taking and are seem to be pretty dangerous. Like, I don't know much about them, but there's a whole burgeoning synthetic benzo market out there now.
Yeah, which, they want to. It's amazing to me that Atizolam is still legal. It probably won't be for much longer. But
is it like an unregulated? It's like not scheduled.
Yeah, you can
order it online.
You can order it online. You have to address the demand. Like, why are all these synthetics coming on the market? Why are all these analogs coming on the market? And well, people feel like they need them. They appreciate the relief that they give. I think that the most deadly thing about benzos, other than mixing it with other drugs, is probably becoming dependent on them and the withdrawals. I know I've heard a lot of horror stories about how devastating it can be when you're addicted to it.
Yeah, the benzo withdrawal. I think like the only two drugs that can be deadly from withdrawing from are alcohol and benzos, because they're both GABA. They both act on GABA receptors and they reduce seizures, and so like the withdrawal has the inverse effect of any kind of drug. So basically, it causes seizures, and that's why it's like super super dangerous to just like go cold turkey stopping benzos.
I think there's also a risk of suicide when coming off of benzos, just because it's so miserable that a lot of people end their lives because of it.
Yeah, I mean, benzos, like, they're widely prescribed, and I've been prescribed them for my own anxiety before, and I think that again, we don't address like why so many people feel like they need a benzo to relieve their anxieties, and we should be like we should be thinking about demand through a structural lens. Like, why does society create the demand for something like an opioid or for something like a benzo or for alcohol? And so these lists like don't address any of that. So like their measurement of harm, which again is alphabetized, is really really lacking for context here. And so the next several drugs are I don't think we'll talk much about them. Anticoagulants. So these are like they help blood clotting, right, for like hemophiliacs or something. Okay, antidepressants.
Yeah, antidepressants I think we should talk about a little bit, just because they're often the first line of treatment if you're experiencing depression or mental health issues. I was 17. I wanted to kill myself. I had a plan. I was going to go down to the train tracks in Phoenix and just stick my head on the fucking train tracks. And I didn't do that, but I told my doctor that I felt like that. And well, here is this fucking pill. And so the first thing I did was the next time I was having a really bad depressive episode, I took some of these, which is not how you're supposed to take antidepressants. You're supposed to just sort of start taking them and they will maybe work for you in about 2 weeks.
They need to build up in your system.
Right. And I ended up having a panic attack and was like, again, planning to kill myself by taking a suitcase, filling it up with rocks, wrapping around my neck, and jumping into my swimming pool. I was pretty creative as a 17-year-old. And I thankfully didn't do that. My parents were able to talk me out of it, but it's like I'm freaking out. And they took the pills away from me. And this is... My dad threatened to sue the doctor, which he never did, but I don't even remember what the drug was. It was so long ago, something with an L maybe. And he refused to let me take them again. But this is like, I go to the doctor because I'm depressed. I talk to him for 10 minutes, and he immediately just pushes this medication on me without really asking about my medical history or genetics or
like doing anything therapy, like what in your life as a 17-year-old could be causing this, so adolescence is when mental health really tends to emerge. And so same with addiction, and so like a lot of these things happen to teenagers, and just like throwing serotonin reuptake inhibitors onto young people, like, yeah, it is the quick easy fix. And of course, like a lot of the research, the randomized clinical trials, these are all pharma funded, of course, and there's a lot of reason to be suspicious of their efficacy. But like that said, antidepressants absolutely do help a certain group of patients who have depression. Like there's I think a 30% of people, roughly, like a minority of people who have depression, they really, really benefit from antidepressants when the majority don't.
Yeah, so definitely not saying that antidepressants are bad, and they're just a tool that, they're kind of blunt, it seems like. Our understanding of how depression works, like, oh, just pump more of this chemical into your brain, serotonin, that'll make you less depressed. Like, it really glosses over.
It's super reductive.
Totally glosses over how complex the human brain is, or the causes of depression on many levels. So you need to be careful with them. I think the most dangerous thing about SSRIs is, taking other drugs. I feel really bad about this, but I had a friend who was on SSRIs, and he took mushrooms, and I didn't tell him not to because I didn't know better. But then he had a really bad trip, because if you're on SSRIs and you take psychedelics, like, the combination can cause some serious mental health problems.
Yeah, I had a friend who was on SSRIs and then took MDMA, and like it was weird for him because like it wasn't really working, because like MDMA like sort of floods your receptor with serotonin, and if there's like an inhibitor going on, and you're not going to get the release, and you're not going to get like the effect of MDMA. So it was like, here we are, a bunch of teenagers like just not knowing how any of this stuff works. And wouldn't it have been nice if in school, if we were in our health classes, that the teachers know that we're experimenting with MDMA, and a lot of us are on psych meds, but of course, like, it's just, this is your brain on drugs, and don't do drugs, and let's pretend like no one in this room is doing drugs.
Right. And the serotonin system is just so complicated, and we don't know a lot about it. There are more serotonin receptors in your gut than there are in your brain. And we just kind of like throw these blunt tools at the problem sometimes. And then a lot of people, it does really help them, and good for those people. I don't want to see them lose access. I don't want to stigmatize towards them in any capacity, but I think
they're pushed onto just about every problem, even grief now. So for a while in the DSM, grief was an exclusion for depressive symptoms. So like if you're experiencing like a lack of interest in activities, if you're not eating right, you're not sleeping right, and you're listing off all these symptoms of depression, none of that counted to a depression score if you were grieving. But somehow the grief exemption was taken out of the DSM. So now even if you're grieving and you have experienced any symptoms of depression, that is now pathologized, and you can get on antidepressants for like the most universally human phenomenon of losing a loved one. Literally happens to every single person. You can now be prescribed antidepressants for that, which just sounds fucked up.
So next on the list, we have antihypertensive drugs, which we're going to skip because, risks of high blood pressure. The next one is bromocriptine, which is used for tumors and Parkinson's disease and type 2 diabetes.
It sounds dangerous. I don't know.
And then clarithromycin. It's an antibiotic, which can have fatal heart complications.
Number 9, clozapine. I guess it's commonly used for schizophrenia. Okay, here's one we all know. Number 10, cocaine.
We're in Hollywood. I wish we had a.
It's just down the street.
Yeah, it was here with the room service, just little lines spread out for us.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't. Cocaine is weird. Like, I've definitely, full disclosure, I've done a lot of it and tend not to like. It's like one of those things that I do it, and every time after I do it, I'm like, why did I do that?
I'm exactly the same way. Yeah, I've done cocaine maybe 50 times. I lost count, but I've only paid for it once, and maybe that makes me a mooch or an asshole. But my basic policy is like, I'll do cocaine, I just won't pay for it. And the only reason I paid for it that one time, I was drunk. So, but you know, I think cocaine is a drug that is, first it's glamorized, and then you're told how dangerous it is, and it's kind of hypocritical in my opinion. I think the dangers of cocaine are overblown in a lot of ways. I mean, there's obviously risks to it, and it's a caveat for every drug on this list is like, we're not telling you to take huge amounts of these drugs and you'll be fine. But I think cocaine, really on the list of some of these drugs, is much more safe, much safer than alcohol for sure.
Yeah, and just so we don't get sued, this is not medical advice. We are not doctors. Just putting that out there.
I play a doctor on TV.
Okay, so number 11, not even going to try to pronounce that.
It's for gout.
Cough medicine. Number 12, NyQuil, Robitussin, Theraflu. I mean...
This is so unspecific. I mean, are you talking about DXM or just like the mixture? I mean, because we were talking earlier about acetaminophen, and a lot of these...
Right, acetaminophen is a cough suppressant, right? So are opioids.
I believe so, but they mix all kinds of stuff in these cough medicines together. And I always, when I get sick and I go buy something over the counter, I always look for the one that's just the pure drug, and then I'll get another thing of acetaminophen on the side so I can put them together if I want to. I feel like that's much safer. DXM is interesting. It is a psychedelic. It's kind of a dissociative sort of like ketamine, and there's been some research that it is pretty effective for depression, which is interesting.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I do wonder if, you know, for like a very acute sort of intense depression, if more and more people are trying ketamine now instead of going to SSRIs, or if like, you know, ketamine, because like the thing that I hear about ketamine for depression is that like it works very quickly, and but it's a very sort of short-term fix. So that's like the rub on that, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's expensive.
It is expensive. It can be about $500 to $700 per infusion, and most places where you get ketamine infusions will say, hey, you should come in for like 6 or 7 of these. So that ends up to be like $3,000 to $4,000, which for me is a lot of money. For a lot of people, that's out of reach.
Right, and no health insurance is covering that, right?
But the results for ketamine-infused depression have been pretty impressive. It's somewhere between 70 and 80% success rates, which they measure success by how long you have a reduction in depression symptoms. And it can happen within 24 hours, usually 72.
Right. It's really fast act.
Really, which, like we just talked about SSRIs, they can take several weeks to kick in. Ketamine is quick. If you're suicidal, ketamine can maybe really help you like right there in the moment. Whereas if you're suicidal and you take an SSRI, you got a couple of weeks for this thing to start working. That's a pretty dangerous window. But like you said, ketamine it's not like it doesn't just like wipe away the depression forever. It may return in 6 months or so, maybe 3 months, maybe a week. For some people, it may not work at all. Like 70, 80% is a really good success rate if those numbers are accurate. You know, this is from clinical trials and from some of these ketamine clinics, from research that I've done on them. 70, 80% is a great success rate, but that still leaves, you know, a good chunk of the population it doesn't work on. Yeah,
right. And so moving on, again, so this list, again, it's alphabetized, like, so it's not even a drug ranking. Like, they're just listing dangerous drugs. And so 14 is heroin and semi-synthetic opioids. It's weird that they're not listing fully synthetic opioids like fentanyl here. I mean, like we obviously talk a lot about opioids on this show, and as we were saying at the top of this episode, like there are plenty of legitimate uses for opioids that are used all the time. Of course, it's very, very dangerous when you begin to mix opioids with other depressants like alcohol and benzos. Like opioids on their own without a tolerance can be very deadly, but opioids mixed with other depressants or even stimulants can also, yeah, obviously it's causing so many deaths across the country.
It's interesting, this list, it kind of conflates a lot of things. It's got Percocet, Vicodin, Oxycontin in here with heroin, you know, and I think Percocet's a brand name. It's just, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's oxycodone and acetaminophen again, right?
Yeah, so Percocet is oxycodone with acetaminophen. Vicodin is hydrocodone with acetaminophen. And OxyContin is just oxycodone without acetaminophen.
So the point I'm trying to make here is these are combination drugs that they're using the name brand of. It's not... It's interesting because that does make the risk different if they have these other things that are added in there that can cause liver damage.
Yeah. So 15 is MDMA. So like when I think of the dangers of MDMA, like I tend not to think of the drug itself as super dangerous. I tend to think of the dangers being environmental and contextual. So like if you're at a festival and you need to pay $5 for water and you're surrounded by sweaty bodies and there's no cool off space and you need to pay for water, like these are the conditions that make MDMA dangerous. And I think a lot of people who wind up dying and the toxicology like traces it to MDMA, I think in almost a lot of them it's always like heat stroke or overheat or exhaustion or dehydration. Like there's something else going on that I don't think is totally overdetermined by the MDMA.
Yeah. The thing about this is it lists the name ecstasy. Ecstasy, from my understanding, is usually a pressed pill, whereas the slang term Molly is more along the terms of pure, or as pure as it can get, MDMA. Ecstasy sometimes contains all kinds of things. So
the pressed pills are who knows what.
So mixing MDMA with other drugs can be dangerous because MDMA is an upper. If it's got heroin in it or something like that, or a benzo or something that's pushing your body's central nervous system in the opposite direction, you kind of get this stress, and that can cause damage to the body.
Yeah, and like the media narrative around MDMA growing up was that it could put holes in your brain.
Thanks, Oprah, for spreading that urban legend.
Right, like Oprah and Dare, and like it was lore. It was just like everyone who was young in the 90s and the early 2000s had heard that, MDMA causes cavities in your brain, like, or, they would like throw up these like nonsensical neuroimaging scans that are just like phrenology. Like it's sophistry. Like this is like junk science. Like it's totally outlandish. And this is the kind of your brain on drugs rhetoric that, just really, really does nothing to inform the public about what the drug is and its actual objective risks and harm. And luckily, this list does not say that holes in your brain is a risk.
Yeah, that myth about holes in your brain has come back with smoking heroin.
Oh, what, like off tinfoil?
Yeah, and there is some evidence that smoking heroin can cause brain damage. It's encephalopathy, something like that. But it's in long-term heavy use. It's very rare. If you're, I don't know if there's really any drugs that can cause holes in your brain reliably. Actually, there are. I forget what it's called, but they use it to give lesions in mice and rats so they can study brain damage, which is really cruel, but this is really beside the point.
It's like a drug designed to put holes in your brain.
Exactly. So if any drug can put holes in your brain and it's not designed to do that, then it's going to take a lot of repeated use, and there are so many other confounding factors in there. We need a lot more research on that before we can say that smoking heroin causes brain damage like that.
So next on the list, methamphetamine, which is interesting. Like I think MDMA, like the base chemical for MDMA is basically methamphetamine. Like they're very similar, like structurally, but also like meth, I think it's just pure. It's like the pure speed, whereas MDMA has some other effects that aren't just stimulant related.
So methamphetamine is amphetamine that is methylated, which makes it easier to pass the blood-brain barrier. So it's
just like faster acting
and longer lasting. Yes. It's interesting. It lists teeth loss as one of the risks of using meth. Losing your teeth on meth is actually an urban legend. It can cause you to salivate less, and that makes your mouth really dry. There is evidence or some research that people who use stimulants also get cravings for sugar a lot. And so if you have this dry mouth and you're eating a bunch of sugar, that causes tooth decay. It's not the meth itself. And there are plenty of people that use meth responsibly. Prescription meth. I know this sounds surprising to some people that don't know about desoxin, but you can go to your doctor. Well, it's not that easy, but some doctors will prescribe methamphetamine, pure methamphetamine hydrochloride, and they use it on a regular basis, whether it's for narcolepsy, extreme ADHD, obesity, all kinds of things. And they don't get teeth loss. Their teeth aren't falling out of their head. They don't have the meth mouth. You couldn't even tell that they're on meth if you didn't know.
Yeah, and like this is a callback to I think like the second episode of Narcotica. I talked to someone who is a recreational meth user, and he was saying how he makes sure that he drinks water and that he eats regularly, and these are basically, like harm reduction is so opioid centric, but there are very simple harm reduction tips that are related to methamphetamine use, and they do reduce like the so-called tooth decay stuff. Like if you're being safe and you know what you're doing, you can avoid a lot of these symptoms.
Yeah, it's one thing we really want to emphasize here is that a lot of the risks of drug use just comes from not knowing how to use it responsibly. If these drugs are illicit, there's not a lot of education about them. You're getting education from the street. So if you don't know how to use, or Oprah, if you're using some of these drugs, then you may not know how to use them responsibly. And that reduces the risks a lot. This is why we have this podcast, is so that we can talk about what the actual risks of some of these things are, that people can use them responsibly and not hurt themselves. And that's a scary idea to some people, harm reduction, that, if you teach people how to use drugs in a way that they don't get hurt, then you're going to have people using drugs. And
you're enabling them, you're encouraging them, and this kind of rhetoric and this like deep ideological sort of like linchpin in American drug culture is exactly the kind of thing that we want to push back against in this show. And so we are going to build the Narcotica school curriculum, and we'll be in every classroom at the end of this year. Just watch.
Yeah. So what if we took away every single risks that's associated with these drugs? And let's say that using meth or using heroin was literally as safe as drinking water. People would still have a problem with that. They would have a problem with this unearned pleasure, this ability to feel euphoria without earning it. You didn't go for a jog. You didn't get an A on your test or whatever. You didn't work 40 hours a week. You just took a pill and suddenly you feel nice. And so many people are uncomfortable with that idea. And I think that stems from this Protestant culture that is endemic in America, that you have to work to earn food, and to earn a place in society. Your value is basically associated with how much capitalism you can generate.
Right, unless you're like producing capital for, billionaires who give you pennies in return, you're undeserving. And so like this stuff, it goes all the way up to like places like like SAMHSA, like the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. This is like a government body, obviously with substance abuse in its name. And so I was on a Facebook thread, and all these public health researchers and these harm reductionists were saying that that someone at SAMHSA giving some webinar or some presentation was saying that like we can't use harm reduction on teenagers. Like the only approach to talking about teenagers with drugs is the abstinence, this is your brain on style sort of bullshit advertising that literally teaches no one anything and sows a lot of distrust, because when a young kid actually does try cannabis for the first time or does try cocaine for the first time and they don't instantly die, like their response is like, oh, well, they were all lying to me.
Yeah.
And like that's just a terrible sort of way to teach anything to anybody. You can't do that. And teenagers are not dumb. Like just acknowledge the fact that they will try drugs and experiment, and that some percentage of them may go on to have a problem. Like that's just the facts of life. And obviously our policy should be calibrated to prevent that from happening as best we can. But we have to acknowledge reality and work backwards, re-engineering where the harms are and build strategies to mitigate and reduce them. And like that's what harm reduction is. And that's what this show like really, really is about. It's that simple.
It's a no-nonsense approach. There's so much research showing that harm reduction really does help people. And you can't regulate human behavior very well. Like anything you try to make illegal, people are going to do. You can't just pretend that there's some magic way of convincing people not to do something. They will find a way. You can only incentivize them to do something else.
Right. And like in sex work, there's a lot of harm reductionists who work in drug policy also do, like, and I see this at the harm reduction conferences that I go to, there is always multiple groups representing sex workers there because they need condoms. They need help reducing the harms of their labor. And so this stuff doesn't just apply to injection drug users who obviously get a lot of the attention. It applies to all of us. And if everyone's working through a harm reduction lens, that makes not only them, but those around them and their loved ones and their communities safer. And like, the DEA is out there cracking down on drug dealing and all these things. Like they say they do that in the name of public safety and public health, but like that's just taken as a given. Like that the things they do are promoting public health and public safety, and no one questions it, and they have no evidence that the work that they do does that. Meanwhile, there's stacks of evidence and decades of research showing that harm reduction does exactly that. Okay, we're only at 17.
17 is methotrexate, which is a cancer, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis drug. Not really going to go into that one. 18 is NSAIDs, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, commonly known as Advil, aspirin, ibuprofen. These kinds of drugs can really destroy your liver. Your liver does not like NSAIDs.
Again, they're often used in conjunction with opioids or in lieu of opioids. Like opioids don't fuck up your liver the way NSAIDs do.
Yeah, especially if you're drinking regularly and you're taking NSAIDs. If you're just giving too much of this crap to your liver, it's gonna overload it. But it's not like we should make aspirin illegal. Aspirin's a pretty amazing drug. I'm glad we have it around.
Helps me out in a pinch. So 19 is weird. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors wasn't like antidepressants like in the A section? Did they just
Yeah.
like double up?
He just doubled up.
Okay.
He picked some different ones, I think. I don't know. I'm not gonna check. Number 20.
Stupid ass list.
Stupid ass list. Number 20 is
Sildenafil?
yeah, also known as Viagra.
Yeah, folks. This stuff, yeah, gives you boners.
And that can be dangerous, I guess.
In all the commercials, though, there's every Viagra commercial has the same line. If your erection lasts for up to 4 hours or more, seek medical help immediately. Yeah. Like, I wonder what's happening there if you take Viagra and your boner just doesn't go away. Like, I don't know, like, biologically, neurobiologically, chemically, what's going on there, but that sounds like a problem.
Yeah. I think it can also create some...
just working too good.
It can create some related heart risks, I think, because it does affect your blood pressure.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's, like, serious, and, like, the FDA probably makes them say that, so I don't want to, like, make fun of that. It's probably a serious thing.
Yeah, it is absurd, but...
I think Viagra is actually, like, it just does what it does. It's like, old man needs to get a hard-on, takes the pill, gets a hard-on, and like that's it. Like I don't see like there's nothing like psychoactive going on. Like it's like you're in the mood already, but the something's going on where the blood isn't flowing to where it's supposed to. So this pill just helps. And yeah, so obviously like someone was going to invent a boner pill. Like men dominate the pharmaceutical industry and the research. So obviously something like that was going to eventually get discovered.
Number 21 is spironolactone, which is also...
high blood pressure.
Risks are hyperkalemia. I'm not sure what that is. But it's dangerous, folks. I mean, the fact about this list is like, what are people supposed to do with this information? Now I know that this drug can cause harms.
Right. I mean, like this list of 25 of like the most dangerous drugs, it's literally published today in the year of our Lord 2019. Like, got it. Like, this is just like, did this guy just like go on WebMD and like is he aggregating WebMD right now?
He did seem to interview someone for this story.
Like at the top or
at the bottom? I think after the list.
Okay. Well, if you're still with us, thank you. We're almost there, folks.
We're trying to figure out what's the most dangerous drug. What's 22?
Oh.
Statins, Lipitor, Lescol, Crestor. The names for prescription drugs, like there's
totally like a typology to how drugs are named. Like they're marketed, they're focus grouped, like they're super I don't know, like I wonder who gets that job. Like, can any like writer just like do ghostwriting for pharma and like come up with the names?
There's this Chuck Palahniuk novel called Survivor, where somebody they just create all these names in advance, and then they have pills that are just pill bottles full of sugar, and they're just like, so it's like they already have the copyright on whatever weird name you can come up with. I think that the types of names you have to come up with, they have to be vague. They can't remind you of stuff. So I don't understand how like things like Abilify, how does that come onto the market? Because that reminds me of the word ability, you know. But the word Lescol or Crestor doesn't mean anything to me. Crestor makes me think of toothpaste.
There's always like a lot of like X's and O's, and they're all like vaguely Latin sounding. Like I really want to like, I would read a deep dive about how pharmaceuticals get named. Like I don't know if that's been written, but that'd be a fun thing to research and write and really unpack, and like also just like interview the writers who do copy for pharma or who make these names. Like, is it scientists? Is it like comparative lit majors? Like who gets that job?
I'm pretty sure it's marketing interns. They just are playing Boggle.
Do they get royalties? Like if they come up with a good name and then that drug is like a blockbuster $1 billion drug, do they get like royalties? Do they get a cut of that?
Yeah. All right, so number 23 is kind of a big one. Let's do a little drum roll.
Okay, this is it.
23, synthetic opioids. Now we have fentanyl.
Actique, Duragesic, Something else, methadone.
Common uses, pain relief. Well, we kind of already talked about opioids. These are, the same thing. If you take too many opioids, what happens is the opioid receptors will release a protein called beta-arrestin 2, and that will cause respiratory depression. Basically, you just stop breathing and you suffocate.
Yeah. The part of the brain that says breathe stops saying breathe.
And then they have drugs that can reverse that. Naloxone is a drug that just kicks the opioids out of the receptor, and so then your breathing will resume.
It's a miracle. It's a fucking miracle.
It is a fucking miracle.
And the fact that naloxone isn't everywhere, like this hotel I'm in, does not have naloxone.
Did you check?
No, I mean just want to be a Boy Scout here. I bring naloxone everywhere I go. Like I have it in my bag right now.
So do I.
You can take it on airplanes with you. I set my bag right through carry-on. And like I don't even use opioids right now, and I have it. Like it's just a good thing to have. And this drug is a miracle. It should be everywhere.
I consider it to be like a fire extinguisher. Like you have a fire extinguisher in every room. You don't think a fire is going to happen. I carry it with me because I couldn't live with myself if I was on the bus, because I took a bus out here to Los Angeles and somebody overdosed and I didn't have something to save them. Like that's, yeah. It literally is so simple to use. The one I have is a syringe.
I have the nasal spray on me right now.
Yeah. Like your grandma can use it. And I've given naloxone to so many people. And sometimes they've told me they had to use it. One kid, he was using opioids. He overdosed. He collapsed on the floor. His grandpa was downstairs and heard a thump. Goes upstairs. And because I gave him naloxone, taught him how to use it, taught everybody what to do, he was able to be revived. I mean, that kid would be dead now.
And then just like a couple weeks ago, there was this whole kerfuffle. A guy overdosed during a Delta flight. And in the Delta first aid kit, there's an EpiPen, there's defibrillators, there's bandages, like there's
aspirin. A lot of drugs on this list are in that kit, but not naloxone. Now it is.
Someone had to be carried off of a plane in a fucking body bag until Delta changed their policy. And I know for a fact there are flight attendants and the FAA and people in government who had been putting this on the radar of airline companies over a year ago, well over a year ago. And Delta didn't pay any fucking attention until the worst thing literally happened.
So that's synthetic opioids. I think the most dangerous synthetic opioid that I know of, there probably is something more dangerous. I shouldn't say dangerous. I think the most potent opioid, Carfentanil. That is one that is used literally to tranquilize elephants.
10,000 times stronger than morphine.
Yeah. I remember when I first heard of Carfentanil appearing on the street, somebody said that they were this is on Reddit, so take it with a grain of salt. They were, dressing up in all this biohazard gear, and they mixed it into a huge gallon tank, like a small amount, and put it in their fridge. And then they felt dizzy and had to lie down, and they couldn't move. And then they basically overdosed, didn't pass out. And they were like, I can't believe I survived. This is this highly toxic chemical that you can't even, be in the same room as. And I'm pretty sure that's all bullshit. There are people that can use Carfentanil, that can inject it into themselves and not die. It's probably not an opioid naive user, but
no way. So I think that there's a problem in the supply when potent fentanyls like Carfentanil are showing up in it. That to me is not anything anyone is doing for kicks. I mean, maybe someone out there has a taste for Carfentanil and their tolerance is so high that that's the only one that gets them the relief that they're looking for. And that might be real, but I think that's very few and far between. And one thing that I want to mention while we're on the subject of Carfentanil is that 6 months ago, the Times ran a piece about how Dayton, Ohio saw a really significant drop in overdoses over the last year. And basically the reporters listed off how, you know, law enforcement teamed up with public health policy people and got naloxone out there, and that expanded Medicaid got people on buprenorphine and methadone, and basically like some vital harm reduction infrastructure was built in Ohio, and it had a positive effect. But there was one line in there that said basically that another factor in why the overdose death rate dropped in this particular area of Ohio is that carfentanil disappeared. It left the supply, which is a totally independent factor of any kind of law enforcement public health partnership. It is a supply phenomenon. Someone somewhere who was maybe putting carfentanil in the dope that made it to Ohio probably saw the headlines that like 50 overdoses in a 2-day span and was like, oh shit, like this is a major problem. This isn't right, because dealers, like, they don't want to kill their customers. That's bad business. And so this like totally random, basically impossible factor, carfentanil leaving, is, in my opinion, probably what led to the biggest reduction in overdose there. And like that to me is what where that kind of supply phenomenon is puts us in a bind, because like good luck finding the source of that carfentanil. Like it, like a tiny vial of it can stretch the opioid supply for days. Like how are you going to find that? Like how are you going to find that in the mail or find that in a shipping container? Like carfentanil and these things are just like the end game for interdiction. And like that's what Dan Ciccarone is always telling me, and it's just like a totally scary thing that like someone somewhere out there is like dropping carfentanil, that this thing that nobody wants. And hopefully whoever was doing that learned not to do it, because it just killed everybody.
Yeah. But bringing up carfentanil kind of underscores the whole bullshit of this list, the whole purpose of...
It's not even on this list.
No, it isn't, which is a little strange. But, you know, carfentanil can be used by some people and doesn't kill them. Like, dangerous is really relative. And it is like you said, that, you know, carfentanil is... It's like if you had cyanide in the heroin or something.
Yeah, it's a contaminant. Yeah.
It's not something that people really want. Some people have ordered it online according to apocryphal stories on Reddit, but you know, I also kind of want to talk about sufentanil. When that was it
was just passed, right? FDA passed.
Yeah, but and the media lost their shit over this.
Oh yeah, they're apoplectic.
The FDA is
approved a new fentanyl.
And what most people didn't realize is that sufentanil has been already approved since the 80s. What the FDA had approved was a new formulation. I believe it was sublingual. And, you know, we've talked about this many times on this show, that the opioid overdose crisis is not really being driven by prescription opioids.
Right. No one's being prescribed carfentanil.
Or sufentanil on the street. And
right, like anesthesiologists give that to people. Like people aren't taking that home with them.
Right.
So like one of my friends, my girlfriend's, one of her best friends, she's like finishing residency to be an anesthesiologist right now. And you know, whenever we're talking, like she knows I write about drugs, and I talk to her about what sort of like what the rhetoric and the discourse around fentanyl is, how if you just are near it, you could die, or if you touch it, you could overdose. And she touches fentanyl every fucking day. It's like literally her job to make sure that people get fentanyl and that they don't die. Like that's her job, and she does it probably really well. She's super smart. And when I tell her these things, she just like rolls her eyes and fucking laughs. And it's like, wait, why does everyone care that there's like a new fentanyl out? Like, I'm gonna use that, and it, some patient might need that one and not another one. Like, why do people give a shit?
It's weird because we're talking about the touching fentanyl myth. There's lots of pills, lots of opioids, and no one's afraid of touching those.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, lately even like the news articles are like getting so paranoid. Like someone touched meth and got vaguely ill. Someone touched heroin and got vaguely ill. Like, it's like, this has just got to stop. Like, I'm like, it's the hill I'm dying on, and it's making me crazy. Got to stop.
You and Ryan Marino.
Yeah, Ryan Marino, if you're listening to this, thank you for being alive. You're doing work, man.
And for people who don't know, he's a toxicologist who
gets blocked by like every medical reporter, like every local reporter, any like medical institution. I think like the Cleveland Clinic even blocked him. He is constantly swatting away pseudoscience about vaccines and paranoia about fentanyl, and he's like universally loathed, and that's why I love him.
Yeah, we need to have him on the show.
Yeah.
So number 24, this is TMP/SMX. It's an antibiotic. We're not going to really go into it, but the risks are, again, hyperkalemia. I just looked that up, and it's apparently too much potassium in the blood, which makes sense. Hyper, too much. Potassium, and lemia is in the blood. So there you go. Don't take too much of this antibiotic.
And don't eat too much bananas. It's bad for you.
Yeah. And number 25, the last one.
Here we go. The last one, folks.
Tobacco.
Good old cigarettes.
So the risks are lung disease, heart disease, cancer. It doesn't list emphysema. It doesn't list a lot of other things.
Bad breath.
Smoking. I'm an ex-smoker.
I'm currently a jeweler. Been jeweling this whole episode.
I can't do
that.
If we're going to get on the issue of tobacco, we definitely have to talk about e-cigarettes, which, e-cigarettes might come with some risks, especially the additives. If you have certain flavors in the juice, I mean, for example...
Like vaporizing mango can't be good for you. One note about tobacco, like actual cigarettes, 500,000 people die from it every single year. And yet, we do not call that an epidemic. And this is like one thing that Leo Beletsky has talked a lot about. One thing that I've written a lot about is that the way that we call, like what we call an epidemic or not, is quite arbitrary. And like, to me, like public health resources must be mobilized to treat smoking related illnesses. Like, infinitely more people are being harmed by tobacco than by, say, opioids or carfentanil.
Yeah, and infinitely more people are harmed by tobacco than e-cigarettes. I mean, we're still kind of...
I think we just need more time for e-cigarettes. We need like a 10-year...
Yeah, we need more research. But this kind of upsets the e-cigarette community, which I can understand, because they want it to be seen as safe. Safe is a word you can't just throw out there, safer, but not safe. You're adding something into your body. It's going to have an effect. With e-cigarettes, one of the things that you have to consider is the additives that are in them. For example, cherry flavor, which is benzaldehyde. You can eat as much benzaldehyde as you want. It's the cherry flavor in Jolly Ranchers. It's in cherries. It's in almonds. You eat it all the time. It's safe. But when you heat it up, benzaldehyde can break down into benzene, which has been proven to be cancerous, and you're inhaling this into your lungs. I mean, probably a lot better than smoking a cigarette and inhaling all that tar and other carcinogens, but it's not necessarily safe. San Francisco recently banned the sale of e-cigarettes.
Like entirely.
Entirely, which is just...
Crazy.
I mean, they were like kind of invented.
Wait. E-cigarettes or cigarettes?
E-cigarettes.
But not cigarettes.
But not cigarettes.
That's fucking ludicrous.
It is fucking ludicrous. It's like, I mean, you could just drive over to Oakland
or whatever.
You could order them online.
Why?
It's not stopping people from being able to get these products. It's just made them a little less available for what reason exactly? Like,
Was that like a Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi joint? Like, who did that?
I have no idea. We could look it up, but it seems pretty irresponsible. Like,
Yeah, that's really shitty.
there is one thing that I should bring up because John's in the room and we did this documentary on e-waste. E-cigarettes are a big contributor to e-waste. The batteries in them are very difficult to recycle. People throw e-cigarettes away like they throw cigarettes away. Now, first of all, you shouldn't throw cigarettes on the ground. As an ex-smoker, I used to do that all the time, but now I realize that kind of made me an asshole. Like, if you're going to smoke a cigarette, throw it in the trash can or an ashtray. Don't just throw it on the ground. It's just fucking stupid. But people do that with these plastic devices that contain nicotine and these lithium-ion batteries. And literally, like, they're issuing guidelines. I forget the organization, but they're listing guidelines for picking up this trash, saying it's a hazardous material. Like, you should wear gloves because you got to worry about the lithium-ion battery. It can explode. That's a danger associated with this drug, I guess, that has happened to people. They're puffing on this thing and it gets too hot and it blows up in their face.
Okay, so here's the rub on the e-cig ban.
Yeah.
So the Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to ban the sale. The ordinance was written by City Attorney Dennis Herrera. He said, quote, "This is a decisive step to help prevent another generation of San Francisco children from becoming addicted to nicotine," he says. Okay, well, so what about the multiple generations of people who are just fucking dying from tobacco? So that's one thing. And then he goes on to say, this temporary moratorium, so I guess it's temporary, wouldn't be necessary if the federal government had done its job. He says, e-cigarettes are a product that, by law, are not allowed on the market without FDA review. For some reason, the FDA has so far refused to follow the letter of the law. If the federal government is not going to act, San Francisco will. So it's like, okay, the FDA, they, are very cozy with corporations, very cozy with pharma. They, by and large, let pharma like regulate itself, and just like the FAA, like Boeing basically sets the regulation for Boeing, and so the FDA is no different. And I guess what is at issue here with this San Francisco ban is that a quote epidemic, see, we decided to call this an epidemic, of teenage nicotine use, like a new generation of teenagers using nicotine via e-cigarettes who, probably a lot of them may not have ever picked up smoking. And so, yes, we need to like make sure that e-cigarettes are not being marketed to kids and that kids are not like totally stoked about e-cigarettes. Like, yes, that's true, but to ban them and so adults can't get off tobacco, like, that's wild. That sounds like the trade-offs are really, really weighted in the negative here.
There's some research to suggest that if you start vaping, you're going to probably start smoking actual cigarettes. And that's what a lot of this hand-wringing about our children is.
So it's like the new gateway theory.
It's the new gateway theory. And
which might be true, whatever.
There is research to suggest it. I mean, I'm not going to throw that out, but it's always about our kids. And it's like, what if they're doing just pure nicotine? Like, if it's not with these additives or whatever, like, there's this kind of sentiment that, I don't know, that is nicotine on its own like really dangerous? It's it affects acetylcholine in the brain, but I don't know.
Like nicotine gum, for instance. Like, I thought that's just like a safe way to get nicotine that doesn't cause cancer.
Yeah, the cancer comes from inhaling the smoke and all the additives in cigarettes.
So at the very end of this list, so again, this alphabetized non-ranking of the 25 most dangerous drugs, in no particular order, but alphabetical for some reason, there is a methodology section. You want to read this?
Yeah. To identify the 25 most dangerous drugs, 24/7 Wall Street reviewed a variety of data and sources, including injury and death statistics for illicit and controlled substances from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, also known as SAMHSA, deadly combinations of pharmaceutical drugs and other substances from Medscape and other sources, and deadly combinations of illicit and prescribed substances from drugabuse.com.
Oh, drugabuse.com. That's a really good source, folks.
These combinations are selected due to their prevalence in society and the severity of their adverse effects. Items on this list are in no particular order. Well, thanks for putting that up front. Many of the drugs on this list are safe for the vast majority of users. The American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, serves as the most authoritative text on the classification of mental and substance use-related diseases. In the latest volume, the set of symptoms named substance abuse and substance dependence are now called substance use disorders.
Okay, so real quick, drugabuse.com, it is a front page, basically marketing for the American Addiction Centers, the AAC. And so if you just Google American Addiction Centers, what comes up is a litany of lawsuits against them for patients dying while under their care. This is a ridiculous addiction treatment corporation, for profit, that basically bought up a bunch of nursing homes and clinics and shit throughout the country, and are so inept that they can't even properly stabilize withdrawal, and so people die while they go to the American Addiction Centers. So at the very end of the page, it's drugabuse.com is operated by Recovery Brands LLC, a subsidiary of American Addiction Centers Incorporated. So way to go, USA Today. Just getting the right to the source there.
Yeah, they're so inept that they can't even scrub their search results.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's a typo and they meant drugabuse.gov, which, by the way, is NIDA. So
I guess the whole point of this episode is, what is the most dangerous drug? This is a ranking that people
Want
obviously whatever drug starts with the letter A.
Exactly.
Oh, God. If you're still with us, thanks for listening. This has been Narcotica Goes to Hollywood edition.
I would probably say that alcohol, probably the most dangerous drug, just for the amount of complications it can create. I mean, literally, if we want to go to Carfentanil or something that's even more potent than that, or arsenic.
Right, it's just a different dimension of harm, the acute toxicity, the acute sort of therapeutic dose versus lethal dose. So there's basically a formula to determine what the therapeutic dose is, what the lethal dose is, and any drug where the therapeutic dose is very close to the lethal dose, which is basically any opioid, that's a harm. That's a measurable objective harm, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So that's a very specific harm, and I think what the takeaway here is we look at societal harm, structural harms, and things that don't just happen to the end user, but what's their life like, what's the relationship with their partners and loved ones and family like, and what's the effects on the community, and this is where we begin to measure what harms are.
Yeah, really the crux of this episode is, in Latin, solo dosis facit venenum. I'm probably saying that really terribly, but the dose makes the poison. It's really a matter of the circumstances of when you're taking a drug that makes it dangerous, and not the drug itself. Human beings really love to personify these chemicals. They like to pretend that they have personalities and behaviors, and that meth is evil, and if you take it, that it's going to somehow possess you.
Yeah, and that fentanyl will jump out of a bag and bite cops. That's definitely a thing.
Or the poor police dogs.
Yeah. Oh, the police dogs.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's a good place to wrap up. The first in-person Narcotica episode. Chris could not make it. He is doing crap in Kensington.
He's in Philly. Chris, wherever you are, one day, three of us will be in the same room.
Yeah, maybe when we go to St. Louis this fall.
Oh yeah, at the Drug Policy Alliance conference.
Right, which I guess we should start plugging now because I guess we're going to be a media sponsor for them. Go to the Drug Policy Alliance conference in St. Louis.
Do it.
November 6th.
We'll be there. We can give you a sticker.
Go to their website to find the dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give you a lot of stickers.
Okay. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, if you have any questions about us, this is not medical advice. We might be wrong about some of this stuff. I hope not. I think we've been covering this stuff
I
enough.
think we hedged. We said that drugs are allegedly dangerous, so drugs don't come back and sue us. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be safe out there.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Narcotica. Narcotica is an independent production by Christopher Moraff, Zachary Siegel, and myself, Troy Farah. Our co-producer is Aaron Ferguson, and our theme music is by Glassboy. You can follow us on Twitter at Narcocast or on narcocast.com. If you like the program and you want to support us, there are a few ways you can help. Tell a friend about us. Most podcasts become popular via word of mouth, or give us a decent rating on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Second, you can become a patron at patreon.com/narcotica, where you'll get access to exclusive bonus content and help us pay our bills a little bit. We are so grateful for the people that make this program possible. We want to stay ad-free, and you guys help us do that. Thank you so much. If you want to send us a suggestion, tell us about using DXM to time travel, or just want to say hi, you can email us at tips@narcocast.com. That's all for now. Take care.